What if I told you that a god was born at dawn, and by sunset he had invented music, stolen 50 sacred cows, fooled Apollo, and returned home pretending to be asleep? Sounds like a myth, right? Well, it is, but it's also so much more. This is the story of Hermes, the wing-footed messenger, the mischievous trickster, the patron of travelers, liars, poets, and yes, even thieves. But beneath the clever smiles and winged sandals lies a god who represents something deeper. The power of transformation, the freedom to cross boundaries, and the timeless belief that wit can outmatch brute force. Hi, welcome to A God Circle, where we breathe new life into the old gods and uncover the mysteries behind the myths that shape civilizations. If you believe that mythology isn't just history, but a mirror to who we are, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe, because each week we dive deep into the lives of gods, monsters, and mortals across cultures. And if this story sparks something in you, drop a like. It helps more than you think. Now, let's take a walk with Hermes, through clouds and crossroads, through myths and meanings, and discover what this trickster god still has to teach us today. When we think of Hermes, the first image that often comes to mind is that of a young man with winged sandals, dashing through the skies to deliver messages from the gods. But Hermes was never just a divine mailman. He was the god of trade, of travel, of luck and language. He watched over shepherds and protected thieves. He guided dreams and guarded doorways. He was worshipped at roadsides, at market stalls, even at the threshold between life and death. In fact, if the gods were like departments in a divine company, Hermes would be the guy with 5 jobs, always moving, always essential. Why so many roles? Because Hermes didn't belong to just one world. He moved between them. He was the god of boundaries, but more importantly, the god of crossing them. Let's pause here for a moment. Think of someone you know in real life who seems to wear many hats. Maybe it's you. You juggle work, family, passion projects, dreams you're still chasing. You move between roles effortlessly, or at least try to. That Hermes energy lives in all of us. Take a moment to imagine ancient Greece. A young merchant about to embark on a journey across treacherous mountains would whisper a prayer to Hermes. A farmer selling his crops at market, he'd leave an offering for Hermes too. Even a traveler standing at a crossroads, unsure which path to take, might stop beside a pile of stones, called a herm, and ask for guidance. There's something beautifully human in that. We all reach crossroads. We all send out messages, hoping they reach the right person. We all carry multiple versions of ourselves, depending on who's asking. And Hermes reminds us, it's okay to be more than one thing. It's okay to shift, to evolve, to flow. Because movement, not rigidity, is divine. And speaking of movement, let's rewind time and step into one of the most remarkable stories ever told about Hermes. It begins not in Olympus, but in a quiet cave, with a newborn god who couldn't wait to make mischief. Get ready, because in the next part, we'll discover how Hermes, on the very day he was born, outsmarted the god of prophecy and changed the course of music forever. They say some people are just born different, but Hermes, he wasn't just different. He was legendary from the moment he opened his eyes. According to the Homeric hymn to Hermes, this trickster god didn't waste a second of his divine babyhood. He was born at dawn in a quiet cave on Mount Cyllene, nestled in the arms of Maia, one of the shyest and most reclusive nymphs. But while Maia may have preferred solitude, her son had other plans. By noon, baby Hermes had slipped out of his cradle, tiptoed past his napping mother, and stumbled upon a tortoise outside the cave. And what did he do? Well, he picked it up, brought it inside, killed it, hollowed out the shell, added strings made of sheep gut, and just like that, invented the lyre. Yes, a newborn invented one of the most iconic musical instruments in history. But he wasn't done. By sunset, Hermes had wandered all the way to Apollo's sacred pasture, where he quietly stole 50 of the sun god's cattle. And being clever, he made them walk backwards and wore sandals made of branches to cover his tracks. Let that sink in, A baby, a literal infant, devised a full-blown heist and covered his trail like a seasoned spy. And when Apollo came looking, Hermes, he swaddled himself up in his blankets and pretended to be asleep. It's a story that's almost funny in its audacity, but also oddly relatable. Because haven't we all at some point tried to fake sleep to avoid getting in trouble? Or come up with a clever excuse when we were caught red-handed? The ancient Greeks didn't just laugh at Hermes' antics, they admired them. To them, cleverness was sacred. In a world where brute force often ruled, someone who could outwit fate, bend the rules without breaking them, was just as powerful, if not more. Hermes reminds us that intelligence isn't about test scores or titles, it's about resourcefulness, about knowing when to act and when to pretend to sleep. The story ends with a twist. When Apollo confronts Hermes, Zeus intervenes. But instead of punishment, a deal is struck. Hermes gifts Apollo the lyre, who instantly falls in love with it. In return, Apollo gives Hermes a golden whip, some divine responsibilities, and recognizes his cunning as a divine gift, not a flaw. A newborn god who stole cattle and ended up with a promotion. Only Hermes. But this was just the beginning, because this one-day-old god had already touched music, mischief, and trade. Next, he would touch something even more sacred, something that waits for every mortal soul at the end of their path. Let's step now into the shadowy threshold between life and death and see how Hermes became the guide of souls. There's a title Hermes holds that's not as flashy as Messenger of the Gods or as playful as God of Thieves, but it may be his most profound role of all. He is the Psychopomp, the guide of souls. In Greek, psyche means soul, and pompos means guide or escort. And Hermes, with his winged sandals and gentle presence, was trusted to lead the spirits of the dead down to the banks of the river Styx. From there, they would board Charon's ferry and sail into the underworld. But Hermes didn't just deliver messages between Olympus and Earth. He moved between life and death. He walked both worlds, gently guiding souls from the light into shadow. It's a quiet kind of divinity, one that doesn't seek attention or glory, but it's deeply comforting. Because if death is a journey, then Hermes is the one who ensures you don't walk it alone. And isn't that what we all hope for in some way? That at the end of our road, someone will be there, not to judge, not to punish, but simply to walk beside us? This role of Hermes was so sacred that no other Olympian shared it, not even Hades. In fact, people in ancient Greece would sometimes whisper prayers to Hermes during funerals, asking him to guide their loved ones safely to the afterlife. Even in art, you'll often see Hermes standing beside dying heroes, like Sarpedon in the Iliad, calm, composed, holding his caduceus as if to say, "Don't worry, I'll take it from here." In modern times, we see echoes of this figure everywhere, from the archangel Michael guiding souls in Christianity to the Egyptian god Anubis, or even the figure of death as a calm ferryman. It's a gentle reminder that transitions, no matter how difficult, don't have to be faced alone. That change, even the final one, can be walked through with grace. So what can we take from this? Maybe that we, too, can be guides in our own way, helping others through hard times, standing beside them, even when we can't fix the pain. Hermes teaches us that presence is power. Sometimes just being there is divine. And speaking of presence, there's one place where Hermes is always present, the in-between, between truth and lies, between order and chaos, between gods and men. Let's explore how this boundary-crossing nature made Hermes the most liminal god of them all. If there's one word that truly defines Hermes, it's this: liminal. It's not a word we use every day, but it holds powerful meaning. Liminal comes from the Latin limen, meaning threshold. It describes that magical space in between what was and what is coming. Hermes lives on those thresholds. He is neither here nor there, because he's always in motion. He's the god of crossroads, of borders, of transitions. And that's what makes him so different from the other Olympians. While Zeus rules the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. Hermes moves freely between all three. He can stand with the gods in Olympus at dawn, walk among mortals at noon, and lead souls to Hades by night. That's not just divine multitasking, it's symbolic. It means Hermes understands what it feels like to be in between decisions, in between places, in between versions of yourself. Think about it. Have you ever been at a crossroads in life? Not sure which direction to go? Not quite who you were, but not yet who you're becoming? That's a liminal space, and that's exactly where Hermes shows up. In ancient Greece, travelers would leave small offerings to Hermes at roadside shrines, often simple piles of stones, asking for safe passage through unknown terrain. But even more than physical journeys, Hermes was invoked during times of change. A new business, a risky negotiation, a goodbye. He was the protector of messengers and merchants, thieves and thinkers, all people who live between one truth and another. Because that's where magic happens. Not in stability, but in movement. Hermes reminds us, growth doesn't happen when everything is certain. It happens when we dare to step into the in-between. So if you're in transition right now between jobs, between places, between dreams, maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're just walking with Hermes. And as he walks between worlds, Hermes often changes faces too. He doesn't just cross boundaries, he shapeshifts through cultures, taking on new roles, new names, and new meanings. In the next part, let's follow Hermes as he appears beyond Greece, in trickster gods across time and continents, and discover what they all have in common. Hermes may have worn winged sandals, but he's not the only god who danced between chaos and wisdom. All around the world, in different times and different tongues, there's always been a figure like him. A divine troublemaker, a sacred trickster, a guide who makes us laugh and think, sometimes at the same time. In Norse mythology, it's Loki, a god who shapeshifts, stirs up trouble, and even changes gender. He's clever, chaotic, and somehow always slipping through the cracks of power and punishment. Among the Yoruba people of West Africa, it's Eshu, a divine messenger and guardian of crossroads. He speaks all languages, carries all messages, and is both revered and feared for his unpredictability. In Native American mythologies, especially among the Plains tribes, it's Coyote, a trickster who teaches lessons by bending or breaking the rules, often to reveal deeper truths. Sound familiar? These aren't coincidences. They're archetypes, universal patterns in storytelling that appear again and again because they speak to something deep inside us. The trickster, in every culture, plays with limits. They blur the lines between truth and lies, between good and bad, between divine and mortal. And that's not always comfortable, but it is necessary, because tricksters, like Hermes, force us to question what we think we know. They open locked doors, they tip over sacred cows, literally and figuratively, and they teach us that laughter, curiosity, and boldness are also forms of wisdom. Think about it this way. In a world full of rules, it's easy to worship order, but without someone like Hermes, we'd never learn when to break the rules that no longer serve us. Maybe that's why Hermes has lasted so long, not just in temples, but in stories, symbols, and spirits across civilizations. Because every culture needs a figure who says, let's see what happens if we turn left instead of right. And in our own lives, maybe we do too. So here's the question. When was the last time you embraced the trickster inside yourself? When you challenged convention, not to hurt, but to grow? Maybe you've been more Hermes than you thought. And speaking of symbols, while Hermes appears in many forms, a few objects are always by his side. Let's take a closer look at his most iconic tools and what they reveal about his deeper nature. Every god has their symbols. Zeus has his thunderbolt, Poseidon carries a trident, Athena wears her helmet and shield, and Hermes, he brings three things on nearly every journey: a winged helmet, winged sandals, and a strange staff called the caduceus, a rod with two snakes entwined. At first glance, they might seem like accessories, but symbols in mythology are never just decoration. They're stories, told without words. Let's start with the winged sandals, or talaria. They aren't just for speed, they're for freedom. Hermes moves between worlds, remember? His sandals are the physical expression of that freedom to go anywhere. Olympus, Earth, even the underworld. They remind us that movement itself is sacred, that there's wisdom in not standing still. Next, the winged helmet, often called the Petassos. It's a traveler's hat, light and practical. But with wings, it becomes a symbol of clarity, intellect, and fluid thought. Hermes was not only fast on his feet, but fast in his mind. In today's world, that might look like someone who can jump between ideas, careers, or cultures, and still stay centered. It's the mark of someone adaptable, but intentional. And then there's the caduceus, two snakes spiraling upward, balanced in perfect symmetry. It's often mistaken for the rod of Asclepius, the true symbol of healing and medicine, which has just one snake and no wings. But Hermes Caduceus isn't about healing bodies. It's about mediating conflict, delivering truth, and maintaining balance in chaos. He carried it not as a weapon, but as a tool to calm, to persuade, to bridge gaps. Imagine a negotiator walking into a tense room, not with anger or arrogance, but with calm clarity and clever words. That's Hermes. His symbols whisper a quiet truth. The most powerful tools are not always the loudest. Sometimes speed, flexibility, and the right word at the right time can move worlds. So next time you see a symbol, on a flag, a brand, a book, look closer. Ask yourself, what story is it telling? What values does it carry? Because mythology lives on in the things we wear, the tools we use, and the stories we tell ourselves. And speaking of stories, Hermes wasn't just a Greek god. He lived on long after temples crumbled. He took on new names, new meanings, and left footprints across Roman roads and even modern culture. In the next part, let's meet Mercury and see how Hermes evolved, yet stayed unmistakably himself. When the Roman Empire rose and absorbed the rich tapestry of Greek mythology, they didn't discard Hermes. They simply gave him a new name, Mercury. But interestingly, they didn't strip him of his character. In fact, they expanded it. Mercury became the patron of commerce, eloquence, travelers, and speed. He wasn't just the guide between worlds anymore. He was now the face of markets, of roads, of communication. In many ways, Mercury was the perfect Roman upgrade of Hermes. More structured, more pragmatic, less playful perhaps, but more powerful in a very Roman sense. The name Mercury itself comes from merx, meaning merchandise. He was the god of merchants and messages, deals and deliveries. So when you see the planet Mercury, closest to the sun, the fastest in the sky, you're looking at a celestial tribute to this wing-footed god, and he didn't stop there. Hermes, by any name, never truly left. In the Middle Ages, alchemists revered Mercury as a mystical substance that could shift forms, solid, liquid, air, always changing, just like the god. In modern medicine, Hermes Caduceus was mistakenly adopted as a medical symbol, when it was really meant to symbolize balance, communication, and safe passage. And even today, we feel his presence in places we may not expect. The Mercury Courier Company. The characters like the Flash in DC Comics, speed, cleverness, winged boots. Hermes Trismegistus in esoteric philosophy, a blend of Greek god and Egyptian Thoth, symbolizing ultimate wisdom. And in every emoji, tweet, or DM we send, we carry a bit of the messenger god with us. Because in a world defined by speed, connection, and transformation, Hermes fits right in. He would have loved the internet, a place where words fly faster than arrows, where identities are fluid and messages are currency. So what's the takeaway here? Hermes reminds us that the old gods never really die. They adapt, they evolve with us. And if we look closely, they still shape the way we live, move, and speak. But behind all this movement and reinvention, Hermes also represents something even more intimate, the power of cleverness, the kind that changes outcomes without ever raising a fist. In the next part, we'll explore how Hermes teaches us that wit can be stronger than war, and how you too can walk the clever path with purpose. In a world filled with heroes who wield swords and throw thunderbolts, Hermes carried only a staff and his mind. He didn't conquer with strength. He didn't intimidate with fire or fear. He outwitted, he outmaneuvered, and he outthought. And that, perhaps more than anything, is what made him divine. Remember his first day of life? He didn't fight Apollo. He negotiated with him. He offered something better, a gift of music, the lyre, and turned conflict into connection. Even Zeus, the mighty king of Olympus, saw value in Hermes' cunning. He wasn't punished for trickery, he was promoted for it. Because in the Greek world, cleverness wasn't a flaw, it was a virtue. This isn't about deceit. Hermes didn't cheat to destroy, he tricked to transform, to bring change, to find new paths. And that matters, because sometimes the world tells us that the only way to win is to dominate, to shout louder, to push harder, to be the biggest force in the room. But Hermes whispers a different truth. You don't always need to overpower. Sometimes you just need to outthink. In everyday life, we see this too. A student who finds a creative way to solve a problem others gave up on. A negotiator who turns a standoff into a breakthrough. A child who makes everyone laugh, and suddenly tension disappears. That's Hermes. Not in myth, but in us. So what's the lesson here? Trust your mind, nurture your wit, value curiosity. And when you're faced with resistance, ask yourself, not how do I push through, but how can I move around? Because sometimes the most divine power isn't brute force, it's graceful cleverness. And that brings us full circle. From the cave where Hermes was born, to the crossroads where he still stands today, guiding us not just in myth, but in every moment where we must choose, change, or challenge the rules. But before we say goodbye, there's one more question worth asking. Could Hermes be walking beside you right now? Let's bring it all together in one final reflection. Mythology isn't just about gods and monsters, it's about us. The gods were never perfect beings sitting far away on mountaintops. They were mirrors, reflections of the many sides of being human. And Hermes, he might just be one of the most human gods of all, because inside each of us, there's a part that wants to move freely, to cross boundaries, to explore, question, and maybe, just maybe, bend the rules. So ask yourself, have you ever been the messenger? The one who brings people together? The bridge in a broken conversation? Have you ever played the trickster? Not to harm, but to reveal a hidden truth or find a better way when no one else could see it? Have you ever stood at a crossroads unsure of which path to take and somehow found the courage to choose? If so, Hermes lives in you. Maybe in the way you adapt when life throws you into unfamiliar places, or in the way you make others laugh during tense moments, or how you always seem to find the words no one else can. Hermes teaches us that cleverness is not something to hide, it's something to honor. That change is not something to fear, it's something to walk through. That life is not just a destination, it's a journey, filled with detours, footpaths, and unexpected shortcuts. And he's there at every turn. So as we close today's story, take a moment to reflect. Which part of Hermes do you carry with you? The guide, the trickster, the wanderer, the poet? Let us know in the comments, because a God circle isn't just a channel. It's a community of seekers, storytellers, and fellow travelers on the path of myth. If you've enjoyed this journey, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with a friend who might just need a little Hermes in their life. Ready for more? Next week, we'll explore another god who walks the line between darkness and divinity. But for now, may your steps be swift, your words be wise, and may Hermes guide you wherever you go.